And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by my co-host, Rick Unger. Let's reintroduce everybody once again. And to his right, she is America's pundit and affiliate attorney. Heather Hansen is back,
I'm back
after a long rest.
Happy to be back, yes.
Well, some of us are happy you're back. And finally,
I'm happy. I don't care if you're happy.
all right, very good. He is the editor of thewisdomdaily.com, and you're not. That is Brad Hirschfield. Mr. Hirschfield.
Good to be here as always.
You're looking well. All right, everybody, let's get right to the Daily Download. And speaking of GOP candidates, Donald Trump had quite a weekend. He delivered two very powerful speeches, one in Vegas at the Freedom Fest and the other in Phoenix in front of 15,000 people. The focus of both speeches? Immigration reform, of course.
I respect Mexico greatly as a country. But the problem we have is that their leaders are much smarter, sharper, and more cunning than our leaders, and they're killing us at the border. And they're killing us in trade. They're killing us. My wife is a legal immigrant. I mean, she went through a whole long process. It's not easy. And we should maybe make it easier and faster, which I think is fine.
This was a Donald Trump speech, so of course it wasn't without controversy, as a group of pro-illegal immigrant protesters made their way into the Phoenix event.
I wonder if the Mexican government sent them over here. I think so.
And get this, Trump on Friday had a meeting with the Friends of Abe. That's a secretive group of Hollywood conservatives, and according to LA Weekly, Trump told the group that the United States made a mistake invading Iraq and taking away a needed buffer with Iran, saying we should have invaded Mexico instead. Apparently the crowd erupted in cheers. Heather, a lot of mainstream Republicans are downplaying Mr. Trump. Lindsey Graham says he's bad for the party, except for Ted Cruz. No, everybody's basically criticizing him, even though kind of taking a safe distance at the same time. Is this a real threat to challenge the Walkers and the Bushes of the world for the nomination?
Listen, right now he is definitely a real threat. Right now he's getting a lot of positive feedback, and he's bringing a lot of issues to the fore that otherwise we wouldn't be talking about. Mm-hmm. You know, the issues about immigration. He is saying, you know, when you watch him speak, everyone in the background is nodding their heads, and they're not doing it, it's not practiced. It is doing it because it's in response to what he's saying. People agree with what he's saying, and they like his fearlessness. I think that in many ways he's good for the party because he's bringing out the issues and making the other people comment on them. So rather than waiting until a little bit later in the process, they're coming forward and speaking to the things that the American public wants spoken to.
Brett.
Look, we've used the word before. We're going to use it again right now. Authenticity. And I get it. I've said it's an authentic circus act, and people would prefer an authentic circus act to real politics. But let's be clear, it is authentic. I think that's where he's going to get challenged by Scott Walker, who also speaks with a kind of authenticity. It's from the heart, and people are desperate for something that feels like it comes from the heart, especially if some of the questions he's raising are real, and they are. So the people who want a more sane policy in immigration are going to have to address the fact that illegal immigration, and actually say those words, not undocumented aliens, actually tap into the energy that people are asking. I think that's why they're applauding and nodding their heads. They want to know, do borders matter anymore? Do boundaries matter anymore? And he has tapped into that legitimate feeling. I don't love the way he addresses it, but he is wise to appreciate that's real for literally tens, if not hundreds of millions of Americans.
I'm going to tap into an analogy I'm probably going to regret saying, but this hit me on the way over here. You know, when you're on the train, you're thinking about these things. That Donald Trump is a lot like Taylor Swift. Stay with me. All right.
I'm with you already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift sells records amounts of albums, yet no one will admit they're a Taylor Swift fan.
Exactly.
And with Donald Trump, it seems to be the same thing. I had a party at my house this weekend, about 50 people. No one would really admit out loud that they like Trump, but they like what he's saying. It's almost like, I like him, I'm just not going to really advertise it.
Well, you know, it's amazing. Go figure that a reality TV star travels down to Arizona, the home of anti-immigration, has an opening act in Joe Arpaio and gets a big crowd. Who would have ever believed it?
15,000 is impressive, though.
Well, yeah, Joe Arpaio pulls that on his own.
Right.
So you know, forgive me if I'm not that interested. By the way, I actually spoke to my friends who were secret members of the Friends of Abe, and it was not an eruption of applause. It was an eruption of laughter. Not nasty laughter, but laughter. So I think we have to be careful. They thought it was funny.
Okay.
Look, I mean, this is what it is. I think it's getting a little bit out of control where we now have a Twitter war going on between somebody who professes to be a serious presidential candidate and a drug lord who escaped from jail. Guys, you know, it's all fun and games, but it's getting a little stupid and embarrassing. I would also add that it's time that somebody say this. We do $220 billion of exports to Mexico every year. There are a lot of people in this country whose livelihoods not only depend on not giving jobs to illegals, but depend on the products that they make that we sell to Mexico. Is Donald Trump thinking about them, Mr. Big Businessman?
Rick,
Quickly.
you know I largely agree with you on this issue, but we're not going to get any traction with people who feel bereft. People don't make this decision because of $250 billion in trade, though it's true. People don't make this decision even though if all those illegal aliens, and that's exactly what they are and what I call them, didn't show up for work, the country wouldn't function.
So all you're saying...
But what I'm saying is we're going to have to appreciate the reality. We can mock Arizona all we want, but the truth is Arizonans, Californians, and Texans pay a grossly disproportionate price for illegal immigration. And until we're sensitive to that, it's not going to get better.
All you just said is that forget the foreign policy. It doesn't matter because the hype that Mr. Trump is selling is what's important.
Well, the Donald didn't just talk about immigration, he also jumped into military and foreign policy as well. Okay, lost audio there for a moment. So with Trump, basically foreign policy, he's looking to, among other things, blow up oil wells in Iraq to fight ISIS. Pretty, I don't want to call it extreme stuff, because we've done that before. Oil wells have been lit on fire. Again, it's straight talk that you just don't get from other candidates.
But we did it in Kuwait, and it was policy. It turns out it was bad policy, but it's not unprecedented. The one thing he has said, and I think he's largely correct, I don't know how we build policy off it, when he says there is no such thing as Iraq. At the very least, it helps us to appreciate Iraq was created 100+ years ago as an artificial construct, and the idea that it's going to ever look like a country that any of us would want to live in is probably a deeply misguided premise, whatever party you work for. So I do appreciate he's willing to say that. His idea that you can bomb your way back to normalcy and safety, I think, is crazy. But the boldness to say there is no Iraq, I think he's right.
Donald Trump and Joe Biden have something in common, apparently.
But didn't he also suggest that he, as president, would be friendlier with China and Russia?
He said he'd take on China in terms of, he's been over the
I
map on
thought
that
that's
a little
what
bit.
he said.
He said we wouldn't get pushed around.
He got a better deal.
Right.
Because I think it's fascinating that he tells a group that he wants to invade Mexico but get along with China and Russia. Now, there's a good foreign policy idea.
Well, I mean, clearly he is more focused on business and less focused on true foreign policy. And I think, well, and I do think that he's going to have an uphill climb. I mean, you worry about Scott Walker and his foreign policy credentials. That's certainly something that concerns me when I look at him. And I don't think Donald Trump has a fraction of what even Scott Walker has. So he definitely has an uphill climb there. And I think that when he speaks to the issues that are most important to him, that happen to be the issues that are most important to the American public, the rest sort of fades away.
Rick?
That's saying something. That he doesn't have the credentials of Scott. Well, I think you're right. Yeah. But you know, I don't know what to say. You know, we're all so caught up at this point at talking, and now we're going to have to add Walker to the conversation. There are some serious candidates in the Republican Party. They may not be people that I would be very supportive of, but I respect them as serious candidates. And all these other people are doing is taking away from a legitimate discussion and not allowing the American public to be educated on these people.
But do you think that that's true, Rick? Because I think that in some ways that he's adding to the discussion. But I think he's adding to the discussion. He's having people like Carly Fiorina is now commenting on what the immigration picture looks like to her. Jeb Bush is commenting on sanctuary cities. But they weren't. Not
no,
in the same way.
he's bought immigration as the #1 issue all of a sudden right now
cities,
because the media is giving him as much time as they are.
Marco Rubio?
Yeah, but
Anybody remember
he's not
that
resonating
name?
the way Trump is in terms of media
Yeah,
attention.
because he's
That's all.
he's
Anyway, we
not
got to go.
rude.
Would you vote for Donald Trump? Go to newsmaxpolls.com to cast your vote. Back with more in a moment. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, joined by my co-host, Rick Gunker, and filling out the panel, Heather Hansen and Brad Hirschfield. We have been talking a lot about Mr. Trump lately, hasn't everybody? Well, because he is giving us a lot to talk about. As you know, the Donald was in Las Vegas at Freedom Fest over the weekend. One of his complaints, he can't get a fair shake from the press. Well, joining us now via Skype, that's from Virginia. It's Chris Cimoletti. He is the Director of Content and Activism at Numbers USA. Chris, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So Mr. Trump continues to surprise the mainstream GOP with how well his message is being received. Why is it resonating? Why is he so effective so far in his campaign?
Well, I think unlike most politicians, he's, in his opinion, he's telling it as he sees it. Most politicians so closely guard their rhetoric and what they say, and they're worried about ramifications of things that they may say, or they're worried about offending possible voters. It seems that Mr. Trump he doesn't care about that, and as he said in his speech, he's going to finance his own campaign, so he doesn't really have any funders to appease. He's not trying to raise money. He's just speaking his mind.
Chris, it's Rick Unger. We could probably all agree that Mr. Trump's campaign has really taken off as a result of the free media he's been given by the national press. So with that in mind, I mean, is it really appropriate for him to say that he hasn't gotten a fair shake from the media when it's the media that has, in this instance, made Donald Trump?
Right, and I don't think it's really fair, and I think, Donald Trump, everything about him is he markets himself. So he's the more outlandish the comments that he makes, the more media coverage that he's going to get. So I really think he knows what he's doing, and he's figuring out a way. He overshadowed Jeb Bush's presidential announcement when he entered the race. He seems to be overshadowing Scott Walker's announcement today. So as long as Donald Trump keeps on being Donald Trump, he's going to continue to grab the headlines. And maybe what he's talking about, a fair shake, is that everybody's talking about the comments that he made rather than trying to do some investigative reporting and look into whether or not the statements that he made about illegal aliens coming from Mexico is true or not.
Chris, Brad Hirschfield, I have a question. You just made the observation that Donald gets a lot of attention because he makes over-the-top or outrageous statements. At what point does the nerve on immigration that he's touched get undermined by the over-the-topness of the comments he's making?
I think he's probably getting fairly close.
And how do you reach?
Understatement
forgive
of the
this
day.
expression. What's the border? And how do you know when you've reached it?
Yeah, good question. I think what we've learned from the statements that he's made is that there's a lot of frustration with the American people out there over the entire issue of immigration, whether it be legal or illegal immigration. I think especially when it comes to illegal immigration, most Americans feel that the federal government has not enforced immigration laws. And it's not just the Obama administration. It goes back to George W. Bush. It goes back to Bill Clinton. It goes back to George H.W. Bush. It's the last four administrations have done a very poor job of enforcing our immigration laws. They see that we have laws, they're not being enforced, and the reason, because they're not being enforced, we now have a situation where we have 11 to 12 million people living in the country illegally.
Chris, do you think, it's Joe Concha again, given this Twitter fight that we're seeing now between Donald Trump and El Guapo, El Chapo, whoever he may be, who El Guapo, sorry.
It's a sweater.
Yes. I'm getting my movies mixed up. Anyway, do you think, this El Chapo, he escapes from prison, right? And about 30 seconds after being out, instead of, trying to find a safe house or just trying to stay under the radar, he gets to the nearest social media, Twitter, to fire back at Donald Trump. And I'm going to ask this as a serious question, actually. Do you think Trump is in any kind of danger? Because this guy is really one of the worst actors you could find on the international stage, probably has the power to inflict harm. Do you think Trump is in any harm or in any danger at this point?
Well, I don't know Donald Trump. I've never come in contact with him. But my guess is that he probably pays for a pretty good personal security detail.
Sure.
He's contacted the FBI. I'm sure his security people are talking to federal agents. And, you know, is he in real harm? I suppose you could say that maybe there is some risk involved with what's been going on. But I don't think anything's going to happen. I think Donald Trump is probably pretty safe, and he'll make sure that he stays in a safe place and isn't going to put himself in a situation where he could be harmed.
Chris, it's Rick Unger again. I got to say something, by the way. I know your organization is heavily anti-illegal immigrant, but you are a very honest man. I hope you'll be back on the show. What I want to ask you is, do you think as an American that it is somewhat embarrassing that somebody who is running for the highest office in our land is engaging in a Twitter battle with a Mexican drug lord?
Well, I don't know that I would have ever imagined seeing it. But in this day and age in politics, I mean, some of the things that I've seen happen, we follow Congress very closely, whether it's within the immigration debate or outside of the immigration debate. Some of the things that we see happen on the House floor, on the Senate floor every single day, I can honestly say I don't think there's a whole lot with politicians in America that surprises me anymore.
And maybe you're right about that.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for joining us from Virginia. We appreciate it tonight, and certainly, as Rick said, appreciate your candor, and we'll love to have you back on the show sometime.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. We'd like to hear from you. Is Donald Trump getting treated unfairly by the media? He's certainly getting a lot of attention, that's for sure. Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let your voice be heard. We may read some of those comments on the air as well. More Daily Wrap right after the break. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Well, the president took to the Facebook today to announce he is granting clemency to 46 male and female criminals.
Over the last few years, a lot of people have become aware of the inequities in the criminal justice system. The fact that we spend over $80 billion a year in incarcerating people, oftentimes who've only been engaged in nonviolent drug offenses. Right now, with our overall crime rate and incarceration rate both falling, we're at a moment when some good people in both parties, Republicans and Democrats, and folks all across the country are coming together around ideas to make the system work smarter, make it work better. And I'm determined to do my part wherever I can. That's one of the reasons why I'm commuting the sentences of 46 prisoners who were convicted many years, or in some cases, decades ago. These men and women were not hardened criminals, but the overwhelming majority had been sentenced to at least 20 years. 14 of them had been sentenced to life for nonviolent drug offenses. So their punishments didn't fit the crime. And if they'd been sentenced under today's laws, nearly all of them would have already served their time. I've made clear to them that re-entering society is going to require responsibility on their part, and hard work, and smarter choices. But I believe that at its heart, America is a nation of second chances. And I believe these folks deserve their second chance. I also believe there's a lot more we can do to restore the sense of fairness at the heart of our justice system, and to make sure our tax dollars are well spent, even as we are keeping our streets safe. That's something I'm going to discuss tomorrow in Philadelphia, where I'm going to lay out some ideas for criminal justice reform, many of which are already getting bipartisan support. Together, we can make our communities safer. We can spend our taxpayer dollars more wisely, and we can make sure that more of our citizens, even those who've made mistakes, have a chance to become productive members of society and contribute to this country that we love.
Now, the 46 acts of clemency are the most granted by the president in a single day since the Johnson administration more than 40 years ago. All involve drug crimes, mostly cocaine trafficking. Some, our own Steve Malzberg, has said this will open the door to hundreds, if not thousands, being released. Do you agree, Unger?
I'd love to know how this opens the door to anybody else being released. Everybody who didn't get a grant of clemency is serving their time, and I can't imagine what's going to change that. But that said, I can't imagine that anybody, no matter how much you dislike President Obama, can have a problem with this. As he said, these are people, some of these people are serving life terms for nonviolent crimes. Many of these people under today's sentencing requirements would have been long out of jail. You know, we actually need room in our jails for people who actually need to be there. This is silly. It's about time somebody acted like a grown-up. I hope that judges around the country will start to follow suit, but it's not going to affect the other people currently serving.
Hanson, we pride ourselves on not being an echo chamber on this show. I have a feeling we're going down that road.
There's a couple ways, but listen, I think that everyone's acting like grown-ups. I think that everyone, both Democrats and Republicans, have agreed that this is an issue that we have to address. What I do think is very interesting is suddenly President Obama is very focused on this issue rather than immigration, because it seems that he's maybe losing some steam when it comes to immigration in the courts. He's going tomorrow to Philadelphia to speak about this issue. Thursday he's going to a federal prison. That maybe give me some pause as far as, is that what he should be spending his time doing?
He's focused on a lot of issues other than immigration. Why would you pick on him for
I'm not picking on him. I'm just simply saying that his focus has suddenly really changed. Oh yeah, I mean, as far as his legacy, this is a new part of his legacy that has not been part of his legacy thus far. I don't disagree. I think it's much better than what he wants to do with immigration.
All right, Hirschfield, quickly.
Look, sentencing is a train wreck in this country. We've got people who commit murder who spend 16 years in prison, and people who buy too much dope and they spend the rest of their lives in prison. It's nuts. I, like the president, believe the country is a nation of second chances. Here's where I'm going to disagree with you, Rick. He used the word "I" over and over and over again. His belief that these people deserve a second chance, why these and not others? It feels more like divine fiat than good governance. And that does concern me. That he happened to have stumbled into the right conclusion on these 46, he probably did. But there's thousands of others who are unaffected, and it does leave at least me wondering, why not?
Rick, I'll allow you to get the last word in just one moment.
Presidential clemency is, in fact, divine.
I understand, which is why, and that's why, by the way, you're right. There won't be thousands released into the streets, but still, it's a weird exercise of power.
Move on quickly. Mark Knoller over at CBS pointed out that today's commutations bring Mr. Obama's executive clemency count to 64 pardons and 86 commutations. Compare that to George W. Bush's 189 pardons and 11 commutations, and Bill Clinton's 396 pardons and 61 commutations. So, final word on this, Heather.
Listen, he's got time. I don't know what time in there. At what point in there, that may well be the answer. You don't know at what point. I think a lot of the presidents do wait until the end of their service.
There's a ramp up toward the end.
It's not the number, it's the quality.
The quality, right?
Are they appropriate or aren't
we don't know
yet.
So what do you think about the president's clemency count? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Let us know. Back with more after the break.
And so, after a great deal of thought and a whole lot of prayer, we are so honored to have you join with us here today as we officially announce that we are running to serve as your President of the United States of America.
And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. That, of course, was Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker officially entering the 2016 race for the White House just moments ago, making him the 15th GOP candidate to do so. Focusing on the fact that he is a Washington outsider, even referring to Washington, D.C. as 68 square miles surrounded by reality, Walker spoke about how he will continue to fight for the American people against big government. During his time in public office, the 47-year-old has taken on unions, cut income and corporate taxes by almost $2 billion in the state, lowered property taxes, loosened gun laws, made abortions more difficult to get, enacted voter ID laws, and made Wisconsin a right-to-work state. Just this Sunday, he signed his 2-year budget for his home state that includes required drug screenings for welfare recipients. While Governor Walker is currently leading in the polls in Iowa, he is polling second nationally behind Jeb Bush, according to the latest Real Clear Politics average. Okay, we've talked about this earlier in the show. You are gritty. You're like a Cheshire cat. It's going to lead to more hate mail, I have a feeling. I don't even have a question. Just go. Just go.
My favorite part of the speech when he said 68 square miles of everything outside 68 square miles is reality. I have to tell you something, Governor. Washington, D.C., aside from government, is a whole lot of reality. You might drop by some of the neighborhoods sometime. In fact, it's 10 square miles, Governor Walker. That is what encompasses the federal government of the United States. Had you said 10 square miles, that would have made sense. But I'll be happy to take you on a tour someday and show you some real reality in Washington, D.C.
And I'll bet he'll take you up on an invitation in a heartbeat.
These are the things that people don't care about. What they care about is the main things that hit their heart. And he speaks to a lot of things that hit people's heart. He speaks to the social issues, which no one else has really spoken to in the way that these people want to hear it. I think that he is going to be strong, and I think he's going to get stronger. I think he's ultimately prepared, as opposed to, say, Sarah Palin when it came to policy issues. He's actually done a lot of training in the past few weeks to get to where he is. I think that he is he's ready for the run.
Where is he? Where has he gotten to?
I think that he knows a whole lot more. I mean, he spoke about the foreign policy issues in a pretty cogent way. He talked about Israel, he talked about China, he studied up. I mean,
I'll give you that. He did study.
And if President Obama got elected, as he did without any foreign policy experience, he was in the Senate for about 5 minutes, and people are willing to be a little bit forgiving.
People are absolutely willing to be forgiving if you're a quick study, and I think he is a quick study on these issues. I think he also does something that none of the other deeply conservative candidates have been able to pull off. He stands for those socially conservative positions, but does so with more heart. So while some people will try and say that he's been hypocritical on gay marriage, I don't think he has been at all. And I want to be clear, I don't agree with him.
His family thinks
right?
so.
No. His teenage sons disagree with his conclusions.
And his wife.
That's great. That's what makes him interesting. He's able to take a stand, and when he was asked, because I love my family. I love that gay couple that's a part of my family. I love my wife, and I love my kids. I think this guy actually may be the one, and again, I don't agree with his conclusion on gay marriage, but I do think it's really important to be able to put out there the ability to say, I believe that a marriage is between a man and a woman, one of each and only one of each, and also say there's room in my heart and my mind to hold lovingly people who disagree with me.
I got to ask you,
that's a game changer.
I got to ask you what you're basing your opinion that he is a quick study in foreign policy on. Is it that he said that if he's president, there will be not an ounce of sunshine between he and Israel, because that is truly a radical foreign policy?
Well, there's nothing radical. Well, first of all, you're asking me that silly.
Do you really have to know foreign policy to say that? So why is he such a quick study?
Because he said, I'm going to go study this stuff, and if you listen to the way he spoke about it, it was much more nuanced and sophisticated.
What else did he say?
So I get it. I know you don't agree with him and don't like him.
I don't know what he said that would show that.
He's demonstrating
Let's talk money, Unger, shall we?
Money, yes.
Yes. He has the backing of certain brothers that I think any Republican candidate would want, and that's the Koch brothers.
That's actually not the case necessarily. You know, everybody's out there saying that, and the Koch brothers did in fact back him in his race to be governor, but they have been very clear on saying they have not decided who they're going to be backing, and may in fact back quite a few of the candidates.
Right.
So
they have the money to go spread it around a little bit.
They can do what they want to do.
That would probably be the smarter way to handle it, right? So you don't put all your eggs in one basket.
You can place multiple bets. Why not? As long as none of the candidates you support degrade the other candidates such they give ammunition to the Democrats in general.
Absolutely. Like who? Like anybody come to mind?
You know, you never know.
Oh,
but
okay.
I would have to say we're still going to see Hillary. Sorry, Bernie.
Yep. All right. Lightning round. Does he win Iowa, Brad?
Yes.
Oh yeah, Iowa, I think so.
Yes.
Yep. Son of a Baptist minister, has a nice little lead right now. He from that part of this. Yep, I agree.
And he also, I mean, to his credit, gave an absolutely brilliant speech, which is what launched him here.
Absolutely. Can't deny his passion, no question. Do you think Scott Walker has what it takes to win the White House? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know. Back with more in a moment. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Well, before we jump back in, let's jump on board, shall we? Newsmax wants to send one lucky couple on a 7-day Silver Sea cruise to the Caribbean this winter. Obviously, a luxury cruise on the Silver Wind. Let's take a look at it, shall we? There it is the trip of a lifetime. To enter, you need to enter our sweepstakes. Visit newsmax.com/sweepstakes to enter. That's newsmax.com/sweepstakes. Okay, before we get to potluck, we have some fan mail for Rick. With friends like these, who needs enemies? First one comes from Earl Hendricks, and he says, all in caps, mind you, Rick Unger is a derriere ending in hole. I don't know how else to put that. He thinks he's so smart in his stupid comments on Trump. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 exclamation points. Jeb murdered Terry Schiavo. Jeb was a stupid governor. Rick, your thoughts?
Jeb Bush fought to the death to save Terry Schiavo.
Funny expression.
You won't be the first person to call me a derriere followed by a hole, but get your facts straight on Jeb Bush.
Okay, we have more. Rick Unger is a juvenile, liberal, nonsensical in his commentary. I can hardly bear to listen to him. They use semicolons here, though, so this is somewhat... this is from Robert Lacasse, and he is Newsmax Phil Donahue. Didn't you once work for Phil Donahue?
I did when I was in college. He would bring his show to Columbus, Ohio, and the school would send those of us in communications over to work for him.
Okay,
yeah. And by the way, whoever wrote that, thank you.
Sure. These are all from, by the way, they're the friends of Abe we were talking about before. These are friends of Joe. So apparently, this must be people I know and they're using different names. Finally, we have Brenda Key, who says, Mr. Unger only wants Jeb to win the Republican primary because he could never beat Hillary. She can't beat Trump. That is why Mr. Unger keeps pushing for Jeff. So by you manipulating the nomination and therefore the election,
what's her
you'll
name?
get Hillary in. Brenda Key.
Brenda, I think you're absolutely right. I think that the Republicans should make Donald Trump their nominee because he will certainly defeat Hillary Clinton.
Well, there you go. See, the comments are very influential here, apparently.
Very.
Oh, good for
Changing
you.
your mind.
So being in the public eye, do you enjoy emails like this? Has any of them ever changed your mind in terms of people disagreeing with you?
Actually, I've had tweets, Twitter people, who have changed my mind on occasion because they'll make a good point and I'll go, I hadn't thought of that. Those, I appreciate you watching.
Very good. Okay, it's potluck time. This is the part of the show we go around the table, share our favorite stories of the day. If you're wearing a nice, bright yellow kind of get up there, you get to go first.
Very bright yellow.
Go ahead.
While I was away, Kate Steinle, who is the woman from San Francisco who was killed by an illegal immigrant, she was killed, and it made me think as to whether or not her family could sue the city of San Francisco. They're a sanctuary city. There was a whole lot of falling through the cracks that led to her murder. The illegal immigrant who murdered her had been released by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, sent to San Francisco. ICE had asked to let them know if she was going to be released. They did not, and then ultimately he allegedly murdered her. So I looked into it, and it appears as though her family would have a very tough climb. We know California is a liberal place with liberal courts. A very similar situation happened in 2008. A woman named Danielle Bologna, her husband and 2 children were killed by an illegal immigrant. She then sued the city of San Francisco. Same deal. That he had was supposed to be deported, was not deported because it's a sanctuary city. She sued the city, and her case was thrown out of court because they said that the laws that applied were not put in place to stop this type of harm, to put it pretty simply. However, some of the laws have changed since then. In 2012, there was a Supreme Court case that sort of stood for the premise that immigration issues are supposed to be handled by the federal government and not the state governments. And because of that, I think that perhaps if Kate Steinle's family decided to sue, they would have an easier way to do it. However, I don't know that they will, and I don't know that they'll have the easiest row to hoe if they decide that that's what they want to do. What I think should happen is the federal government should sue the way that they did the state of Arizona. We've seen that happen when they think that the laws are too harsh. On the other hand, when you've got situations where states, cities are not enforcing the laws, and it's actually 3 years ago, John Martin, who was at the time the director of ICE, asked for the feds to step in and sue Cook County, where President Obama is from, to do something about this, and nothing is being done. And I understand that there's reasons for these sanctuary laws, and and I get it. But right now, they are really, really serving to make these cities more dangerous. And there's got to be a way to handle it. And I think that the federal government should step in and try to make these cities and states do what they should be doing.
So if you were asked to take this case, you would say no chance?
I'd take it. I would take it, and I would fight it. And there's a lot of ways. I mean, you know, the San Francisco attorneys back in 2008 did a memo to the mayor specifically laying forward the problem that they think they have with federal preemption. So they know it's an issue there. They know that they're breaking the federal laws, and I think somebody should take the case and fight it if that's what the family wants to do.
Rick, last word?
It's a really interesting argument. It is. I see a lot of validity in what you're saying. It does make me wonder if it would lead the way to cities being more responsible when people are killed by Americans.
Yeah, I don't think so, because of the way that the law is.
Okay. Well, excellent potluck. Thank you for bringing that up. Up next, it's time for Yay or Nay. This is the Daily Wrap. Daily Wrap. It's time for Yay or Nay, or is it? Oh no. We want to read your comments first. They've been coming in by the boatload. We'll let the panel handle it. First, my co-host, Rick Unger.
Well, mine is from Kate Wallace, who writes, I think that Rick Unger's absolutely wonderful. No, that's not at all what Kate wrote. Kate wrote, I don't think that Scott will win the primaries. He hasn't done enough in Wisconsin to turn around the state's job situation. I would suggest that Kate's either from Wisconsin or has been keeping up, because she's exactly right. She knows what she's talking about.
Fascinating. Hanson, what do you got?
Mine is from Will Taylor. He says, Walker, I believe, has no chance in winning. He is very good at BSing, but he looks like the type that if confronted by Putin, for example, he would just curl up and cry.
Wow, candid. Yes, go ahead.
And from another end of the party, this is from G. Baker. Yes, I think that Scott Walker has what it takes to win the presidency. If the GOP will give him a chance, and the GOP isn't totally controlled by the progressives. Personally, I think that Scott Walker and Donald Trump would make a good ticket, or Ben Carson.
Wow, Walker, Trump,
and Carson. Let's put them all on.
Yeah, why not, right?
But then you
a
have
triumvirate, like classical Rome.
Those GOP progressives that are going to get in the way, man. It's
well, that's what I want to know. Is it GOP progressives who Mr. Baker or Ms. Baker is upset about, or is it progressives from outside the party manipulating conservative politics? I'm not sure.
Looks like
progressives in general, yes. Ben Carson, an excellent Surgeon General. That's what I say ultimately will happen. That's what I would do. Anyway, 2016 GOP hopeful Jeb Bush says President Obama, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and current Secretary of State John Kerry are all fancy talk and no action. In an interview with the New Hampshire Union leader last week, the former governor of Florida said that rather than be the world's policemen, we have to be the world's leaders. And then said that our current crop of leaders are creating chaos by confusing the American people.
World's policeman, but we have to be the world's leader. And there's a huge difference. This guy, this president, and Secretary Clinton and Secretary Kerry, when someone disagrees with their nuanced approach, where it's all kind of so sophisticated it makes no sense. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Big syllable words and lots of fancy conferences and meetings. But we're not leading, that creates chaos and creates a more dangerous world.
I love how you have a major political candidate and you film it with your iPhone. You know, what is that? And you got to turn it to the side so you get the full screen. Anyway, is Jeb Bush right in terms of fancy language getting in the way?
I'm a little bit shocked that that's the tack that he's taking. Nuanced foreign policy? Oh my God, we can't have that. No, it's a ridiculous remark. I mean, he may disagree with the foreign policy, but that's
an A. Heather?
I think, listen, he's definitely calling to the same thing Scott Walker did today. We need leaders, and I think that a lot of Americans feel like we do not have leadership when it comes to foreign policy, and we need someone who's a lot stronger. So I think that he's got a great point.
Bradley?
Not Jeb at his best. I agree with him. We do need leadership like we haven't had it, but it's precisely when you wield assertive leadership that you need the capacity for nuance.
Okay. One codicil real quickly. He may not like it, but unfortunately in the real world, being a world leader and being a world policeman is the same thing.
Okay, Rick, you're going to love this story we're going to talk about next. Amazon may be getting into the detective business. The online retailer is now looking into why Texas Senator Ted Cruz's book, A Time for Truth, failed to make the New York Times bestseller list despite selling over 11,000 copies in its first week. One of the reasons the Times provided for leaving the Cruz book off its list was strategic bulk purchases. But Amazon says their sales data shows no evidence of that in their records, which matches the book's publisher, HarperCollins, and their findings last week. I asked a question when we talked about this on Friday, but now I have to ask again, given Amazon's testimony, is there something political in play here? Are you convinced, Unger?
If there are no bulk sales to particular organizations, then Ted Cruz is the very first politician in history to not do so. Look, I mean, I have a funny feeling Amazon's saying, ooh, we didn't think to check. So all of a sudden there is no, look, I don't know. I mean, maybe the New York Times is playing games. I don't know why they wouldn't do it with others that they dislike as much as Ted Cruz, but I don't know.
Yeah, they're just not presenting their evidence. That's right.
That's right. And it doesn't.
Give
They
pause.
have a reputation for leaning liberal, so it may well be part of that. So
They have not endorsed a Republican since Eisenhower.
Right. It feels like they're playing games here, so I think the evidence on our side.
Why did they put everybody else who's written a book from that party on the list?
maybe they just like him less.
Hard to know.
Yeah, I could see that. Finally, there was all these reports out today that Rambo, Sylvester Stallone, was going to take on ISIS in Rambo 5. Should Rambo even be made, considering that the title character is 68? Quickly.
Nay.
Yeah, Rocky's enough. Another Rocky's good.
Don't care.
Don't care. Okay, and we end it with apathy. Anyway, thank you, panel. Appreciate it. Newsmax Prime with J.D. Hayworth. That's next.